I guess. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
All right.
Hilarious.
All right. So hi, Candace.
Hey, Toni. Like we didn't just
Um,
talk 5 minutes
yeah,
ago.
like we'll pretend like we weren't just having a conversation before this conversation. But anyway, so guys, for those of you who are joining us today, Candace is a really long time friend of mine. We went to college together. We've like known each other for over 10 years now. And so we just thought with everything going on that we would just hop on and do like a little video kind of freestyle chat between the two of us and just talk about kind of things that we are using to help us through this crazy whirlwind time that's happening. I am, just so you know, like our backgrounds, I am a licensed esthetician in the state of New York. I've also been a project manager in construction and interior design for over 15 years now. So my journey through wellness started maybe 5 to 7 years ago, and I have a little website, a podcast that you can look into if you want to learn a little bit more about my journey with that. But basically, through that discovery, I have kind of recommitted my kind of life purpose or path, if you want to talk about that, to really helping everyone that I have in my sphere of influence really use wellness tips and tools to help give their life a little bit more fulfillment and help them find direction in terms of course of what they want to do, whether it's through reinvention of something they already are doing or completely taking the leap and trying something completely new. So in this conversation, I'm just going to lend my knowledge base in coming from that side and that background, anything that I work with from aesthetics, to tips that you can use in productivity, and then how that translates into wellness. So Candace is going to give a little description about her and her background and kind of what she's going to contribute for today.
Thank you, Toni. So my name is Candace Cordelia Smith, and I am a journalist, actress, on-camera host, and I'm pretty much an amateur when it comes to health and wellness in the sense that I don't have a degree in it. However, based on my experiences throughout life and, you know, being a young woman in America, it seems as though a majority of us, we go through our own trials and tribulations when it comes to body image and dieting and things of that nature. So from the time I personally was in middle school to now, I've had many different experiences when it comes to health and wellness in terms of finding out what foods work for me, what foods don't work for me, how to eat healthier, and going into fitness as well. So my background stems also in terms of fitness, just going to the gym, running outside, figuring out what works for me in terms of, do I like Pilates, yoga, boxing, and just kind of going about health and wellness in that sphere. And just as Toni explained not too long ago, we are currently in a very turbulent time. Although we've both talked about this before, it seems turbulent, and it is to a certain degree, but it's also a time that is brilliant in a sense in terms of once we get out of this and see the light at the end of the tunnel, figuring out what does it mean to be healthy? How can I be healthier? Outside of this experience, and what can I do in terms of eating the right foods, going to the gym or not going to the gym? How will life change for me after this? And we both believe that life will change drastically in terms of what people think about health in general. So that's pretty much my little spiel in terms of what I bring to the table. And I also do work as well within sports. I do within independent wrestling, backstage interviews. So I pretty much have seen things from that perspective as well, talking to athletes and what they eat and what they ingest and observing how they treat their bodies. So that's what I can pretty much bring to the table in terms of this conversation and going forward. And I hope that you guys learn a lot from it. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I would agree with you on all those points. Even in deciding to do a video like this, you know, there's a lot of trepidation about putting yourself out there and putting out what you feel might be helpful because, you know, you're fearful of people responding in defensiveness or fear and, you know, coming at you with this attitude of like, well, what do you know? And you're not an expert in this. And blah, blah, blah. And really, we both agree, and we want to put the disclaimer out. We have experience that I think is valid. And I think when people talk about the experiences and share their stories, it helps other people. Like, it's not a diagnosis, it's not a prescription. We're not telling you to run outside and do these things, and that you have to, but it is a way of sharing a history and sharing stories to just keep people informed and connected, and making sure that they're aware that you're not alone in this experience. And just sharing your experiences between two people that then other people might see and share and then do the same, is what will help connect us and uplift us as a community. One of the major things I wanted to make sure we talked about before we get into all of these things is that if you are in a place, I mean, I was just listening to an IGTV post from a tarot reader that I follow, Rashunda from Stay Woke Tarot. Shout out to her. You should check her out if you're into this sort of stuff. But she spoke on a topic that I very much was feeling, and I've heard from several people, where she just basically gave a platform and a space to say that, listen, if this isn't for you right now, like if you're not in a space because you're so worried about literally keeping your lights on or how you're going to pay for your bills, and you're not in the position or the place to say, oh, I'm just going to be in this spiritual enlightened mood and just think about all the positives that there are in the world, understand that that is totally valid and it is completely fine. And just because Candace and I are here trying to talk about things that help us through times of this doesn't mean that she and I are not experiencing those very same anxieties and feelings at the same time. It's really a matter of choice. And I think everyone has to sit in their feelings to some degree. Like, you have to accept it, you have to face it in order to bring it to light and clear it. But if you feel called to, and when you're ready and you want to look for certain resources to help you go beyond that moment of fear, that anxiety, that is very real, you know, like survival is real. These tools or tips are kind of what we're hoping will help you get to a next place. And maybe it's just for the hour, or maybe it's just for the 5 minutes. But it is still something I think that it's important to recognize that your feelings are valid. You're allowed to sit in what you're feeling at this present moment, even if it is what some people would call low vibrational. But our ultimate aim is to get you to a higher place and to help you, whether even if it's just through this emotional support of talking it out and sharing some wisdom that gets you to the next point. So that is definitely something I wanted to make sure we kind of put out even as a disclaimer. So that you guys are aware we're not being insensitive to saying like, oh, you can't feel bad right now, you can't feel stressed, you're not allowed to feel worried. We're just trying to shift the conversation and give people some options when they're ready to move on, right? It's like, take what serves you and leave what doesn't.
And that also, that's really important what you bring up, Toni, because just before this call that we're doing, I was watching a recent Russell Brand video on YouTube, and he so far has put out 2 videos in response to the epidemic or the pandemic that's going on in the world today. In one of the videos, he mentions, in terms of fear, he called what people might be experiencing now 2 different types of fear. You have wisdom fear, and you also have panic fear, which I had never heard of those 2 different ways to describe fear, but it was very profound. He said, in terms of, in his opinion, wisdom fear is the type of fear that a good amount of people are engaging in right now, fear in which we are being aware. So we're not letting the fear of what's happening rule our lives. We're just reacting to it in productive ways, which is washing our hands, the social distancing, all of that stuff that's being recommended for us right now, versus the panic fear, which is buying out all the toilet paper in the grocery store because
buying 1,700 bottles of hand sanitizer and like hoarding it,
and or capitalizing on it for you know to make a buck from it. So I liked how he mentioned that, because it is true, and I feel as though it's important to distinguish and or differentiate those 2 things, because it's very real. And just like you were saying a few moments ago, it's okay to feel fear. And I think in our society, we're taught in different ways, whether it's insidious or direct, that you shouldn't be fearful. You just go through life, and if you're fearful, that means you're weak,
Mm-hmm.
or that means that something's wrong and it has to be fixed automatically. And when things like this happen, such as a pandemic or, 9/11, we're human beings, and it's okay to feel fearful about what's going on. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because being fearful of something doesn't mean that you're weak, or it doesn't mean that you're wired the quote unquote wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a healthy, normal response. And hopefully the things that we talk about in this call are just suggestions in ways to kind of combat that fear, to make you feel a little bit better and to make you feel productive and healthy, because that's the main aim, is to feel healthy in some sort of way, so that you can go about your life and do the things that you want to do in your life,
Yeah.
So,
And you and I have been like talking a lot about this concept of how things are going to be changing from this epidemic, how they have already. I mean, with this whole social distancing and the call to quarantine and self-quarantine, even if you don't really feel like you have any symptoms, and how it's already affected the everyday average things that you do, your daily routines, in a way that's so noticeable overnight. So it wasn't even really like people had time to adjust to it, gradually go into this new way of living. It kind of feels like it definitely happened overnight. So the startling realization of that, and like getting into the mode of this new reality, we both understand, I think a lot of people do, is daunting. Like, it's not normal. We joke because both of us are water signs. Wait, right? No. Are you a water sign? Right. She's
I'm
a Cancer sun. I'm a
people
Scorpio
care
sun.
about.
Yeah. So
But I'm
we're
also
like by
rising.
nature, like we're by nature kind of introverts. So we kind of joke about the fact that like this is shit we've been doing
Seriously, our whole
forever.
lives.
But not out of necessary precaution for something that's like
right.
So I just feel like when we talk about this new shift in this paradigm of like what our reality is, the platforms that we have, like this, being able to video chat with somebody who's you're friends with or that you care about, being able to keep up with news on social media or even just through television news, things like that, and newspapers that are now digital. We are in a point where we can reinvent how we label community, and understanding that it doesn't necessarily have to just be limited to physical interaction in order for you to maintain a sense of community. And so we're both talking about how using these digital platforms helps to remind people that we still have a community. And maybe we're going to shift the way that we are reliant on communicating with each other, less in terms of in-person, working in an office in your cubicle with 500 other people, or being in the shop every single day, but that these types of communication, these tools that we have at our advantage, can now shift from just being about material and just being about aesthetic to really be about keeping a global community together and supporting one another. So yeah, I mean, we definitely are going to have a totally different shift in how we operate our day-to-day lives, for sure.
Yeah. But it's intriguing for me, because I feel as though we live in a society where social media is a huge part of our daily lives, and there's been constant back and forth conversation in recent years about how it's affecting the way we relate to each other. So when this pandemic first just cropped up, and it seems as though, yes, it just, everything shifted overnight. What I personally found intriguing and interesting is that with the self-distancing, being at home, the self-isolation, people now are more inclined to go on Twitter, go on Facebook, go on Instagram. But I've been thinking over the past few days, how different is that though? Because I feel like we've already been shifting towards this way of relating to each other that is more online or more digital versus meeting up with someone in person. So the things that are happening as we speak in real time from second to second, I'm just very hyper aware of it and how people are relating to each other now, because I'm thinking, well, is it different from what we were doing 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago? How will this exactly change things once we get out of this, this situation? Are we going to feel more inclined to meet others face to face now? Which I also feel that's also a thing that's been cropping up at the top of the year. We've talked about this, especially in the spiritual community, talking about people who want to feel something authentic and people who are starting to feel as though they're tired of social media, they're tired of Instagram, they're tired of scrolling and looking at people's feeds. They want to feel something real.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's I think that's definitely what will be the difference. I mean, I've already been starting to notice it as a person who's on Instagram, not really for a personal feed anymore. I really engage in it more for my business and my like professional career. Yes, it has a personal aspect to me because I am the business, but I've already started noticing, and I'm sure you have too, like brands, at least intentional brands, smaller brands that are really individuals behind a brand. I've been noticing that they have been using the platform to really reinvent themselves in a way that shows their intentional rooted focus. I definitely am still seeing those like, makeup haul tips and
hey Oscar,
right? He's chiming in. I'm definitely still seeing the status quo, like posts and things like that online, but I think I am seeing a lot more people just being like, oh, okay, well, you know what? We need to find ways of supporting each other, as I was talking before. So I think like you make a really good point. We were already shifting in this way where we were always complaining about like nobody talks to each other in person anymore. People are on the train and they're all in their devices. But I think now people are actually being more intentional about how they use these tools. Oscar.
He agrees.
He's like, it's so funny because like dogs just literally don't like male people. like I know it's my mailman out in the hall, and he's like, no, I'm not here for you. Like, you and your beeps and your carts, like, so but yeah, like I feel like people are some a majority, like a lot of people are starting to come around to using these tools for their voices in an intentional way,
Yeah. But what I want to know is how long this is going to stick, though, because
for real,
as we've seen in history, tragic things occur, and as a country, we come together for a little while, and then we end up going right
back. Yeah, because like 9/11 wasn't that long ago, and now we're in this like xenophobic, induced
which is
panic of a society. So yeah, like I feel you that and that worry is real. Like
I would love to know people's reaction after they see this, or their thoughts on how this is affecting the Asian community, because I mean I'm coming from right outside of Philadelphia. I'm coming right outside of Philadelphia, and before this really blew up, people were starting to get fearful, and just right around the top of it where the word coronavirus was, really landing into the mainstream and people were becoming more aware of it as cases were cropping up. I remember there was a report on the local news how folks in Philly just were starting to not go into Chinatown to get food,
go to Chinese restaurants to eat.
Right. And my first thought was, I'm like, where do you think they're getting their food from? Do you think they're importing it from China? I don't.
Every little thing, yeah.
Right. And it's just like, after that, not too long ago, there was a report of an Asian couple that got beat up, assaulted in a subway station by a group of people. And I'm thinking, is this what we've devolved to? I mean, are we really targeting a race or people of a certain nationality because of what's happening, and we don't even know where, and there's all these theories, and that's a whole other conversation as to where this came from and all of that. But the crux of the matter is that, and this has just been something proven throughout history anyway, when things of this come up in society, we come together, people come together and they congregate, and humanity shows the best parts of them. But on the flip side, humanity tends to also show the worst sides of them. So I would be I'm just going to be extremely aware when this is said and done, how folks are not only going to relate to each other and treat each other with more kindness and respect, but what are we going to do about the xenophobia that seems to be cropping up, or possibly was already there, but now it's become more something that people are reporting on and stating that they've seen on social media, that kids are getting beat up. Asian kids are getting beat up just because of what they look like, because people think they brought this virus over here. It's, you know.
Especially when you're getting that direct message from leadership, like you're tuning in to updates from the president where he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to call it a Chinese flu because it came from China and they're trying to blame us for it. And it's like, okay, so are we in a middle school like fight in the schoolyard, or are we a country that should be setting the standards for how we lead? And I think through calm, effective communication as to how this isn't something that we did, or this isn't about who did what or how it originated and where it originated, but the fact that we're all dealing with this as a global pandemic, that is actually what's more important, instead of kind of throwing these, you know, egotistical jabs at one another. Like we're just in certain cliques in the schoolyard. Like it's like, this is literally the actions that you have actual, you know, the things that you say have actual consequences to people's individual lives. So yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to this whole idea of like, yeah, we definitely have a choice. Like we definitely, as a collective, a global community, we have a choice where we can continue to feed into these fears and continue to spiral more and more into this, you know, all right, it's always going to be them versus us. It's everyone who's outside, as if a virus like this doesn't travel, or, you know, doesn't not discriminate based on who you are or what your ethnic background is. And that is just going to separate us further and further and divide us in a way where we aren't sharing communications with each other. We're not sharing information that will help everyone in the populace. And we will all pay as a result of it. You know, just because we're all acting from this place of, well, this is about you, not about me, or this is your fault and it's not mine, and this is happening to me, and not how we can help as a collective so it doesn't affect more people than it already has and that it has to. So yeah, I hear you on that. It's definitely something that's going to be interesting to watch over the next coming weeks as it unfolds. But you and I have also talked a lot about astrology. Like we're definitely people that like follow astrology. And it's so interesting because I remember, like, you know, since we talk a lot, and we've been talking even since last year about how everyone has been talking about how 2020, everyone was like 2019 is trash and 2020 is where it's at. And
now everybody doing
everybody who was studying astrology or following it knew that it was like, I don't really know if 2020 is going to be that big of a walk in the park. And I know that even through like my personal newsletters that follow astrology, like I've been kind of telling people like, yeah, like the energy is lifting in certain areas, but like we are literally entering a year of personal and outer planet retrogrades for the whole year.
and you know, even if you don't know about anything about retro, because even the topic of retrogrades went mainstream a few years ago. Like no one knew what retrograde was. Mercury, and now it's in the lexicon of pop culture. Like, oh, I'm having a crappy day. Must be Mercury retrograde.
Like the millions and billions of memes, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because I have friends who've never been into astrology, and I'm not going to sit here and say I know everything about astrology.
Me either.
Just something you know, we know what we know. But I have friends who've never been to an astrology, don't know anything about tarot readings, oracle cards, none of it, crystals, none, and they've been coming up to me and saying, so what's up? What's happening in April? What do you think is going to happen this year? Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? And I'm just sitting here thinking, you know, this is something that people in the know, whether you want to say you've been a part of the collective and you follow astrology, you read your horoscopes, or you go so much as on YouTube and follow readings and things. A lot of people who in the community have been following up knew that 2020 was going to be a really powerful year. No one, we're only human. We don't know everything. We can't, you know, some people might prophecy and say they can look into the future, but as case may be,
like not what astrology is at all.
Right. And exactly. And it's not like we were sitting here thinking, oh, there's going to be a pandemic to be the catalyst for change. Who would have thought that we would all as a globe be in the situation that we're in? This is unprecedented. We've never been in something like this. These are things that you read about in history books in school. You know, you read about the yellow fever and the bubonic plague, and you think, well, this will never happen in my generation. And now it's like people don't know what to do because we're in something that's massive that we don't know how to control it. It has no face. It has a name, but it's something that it's here, and we're dealing with it in the best way that we can. But as far as astrology goes, you know, we've talked about this. We knew that this year was going to change the globe in some way, on an economic scale, professional scale, personal scale, everything. And in real time, you see the stocks are falling and folks are losing their jobs. Folks like you and I are quarantined for about 2-3 weeks, not being able to go to work, and everything is just a bit uncertain. But in the midst of it all, we knew that we just had to be calm and we had to stay chill, because this will pass. It's not something that will be here forever. It will pass. We don't know when, and that's just life in general. And for me personally, from what I'm seeing, how other people are reacting, that's the biggest indicator of all, just how each person in my life has reacted to this. And it's run the gamut to absolute, I don't care, I'm gonna die anyway, to which, and we'll talk about that later. That's on that, you know, Vanessa Hudgens tip. I think we're gonna die anyway.
Right.
You know, I'm sorry, I like Vanessa Hudgens, but it is what it is.
You know, like Chrissy Teigen, what did Chrissy Teigen say? She was like, everyone says dumb shit once in a while. And it's like, well, yeah, like
that's what happened.
Let's hope we realize that was really dumb.
You know, from that end of the spectrum to complete and utter panic, where it's like, I have no control over my life and I don't have a job at it. And it's there's just no, everyone is going to react in their own way, which is completely fine. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own way of going through life and handling things. But as you and I have discussed, it's as though some people were much more well prepared for this mentally than other people, because some folks just have an intuition in terms of what they feel is coming up next. And I don't know about you, but within the past decade, it's just been, a lot of people have stated that this past whole decade has been rough. It's been rough. Like, we've gone through a recession to, actually, no, that was 2008. So 2010 was like kind of still in the throes of a recession.
Yeah, like we were still recovering from it.
Right.
And our lives were still changed dramatically, like by it, you know, like the way that we looked at lending, the way that we looked at money and debt and mortgages, and was it really something beneficial to buy a house, like how you approach the idea of loans and banking and trusted institutions. So even though 2010 might have been on the upswing of the recovery, it still was the start of a real shift in how we knew the established structures to be, and seeing how those things were dismantled and kind of exposed for the vulnerabilities that they had, and how we as a group of peoples have to hold things accountable so that things like that don't happen. And putting those kind of regulations and procedures in place, where some people were like, oh, we don't want any regulations, we just want a free market economy and and it's just like, okay, but when everything is just not held to account, this is the stuff that happens, right? So,
and that goes into financial health. And, you know, we talk about health and wellness, and people think it's just eating right.
It's like woosah and like, oh, I meditate occasionally.
Right, and working out. But financial health is an actual thing. And
it's holistic health. It's like holistic wellness.
Right.
You know? The whole concept of it. But yeah, I mean, like when we were talking about the whole concept of astrology, like I just wanted to make the point of the funny thing about people who are like now coming to look to astrology as this kind of guide is interesting, because I would remember and recall lots of people saying to me like, oh, astrology isn't real, I don't believe in it, you know, it's just a bunch of like woo woo. And the thing about it is, it's like astrology is a science-based practice. Like people literally have just been looking at historical events in time and matching them to actual physical transits that's happening in the stars and with the planets, and then categorizing those and turning it into a library, and then studying the themes and archetypes and patterns of which they see that have been occurring. And so I think the key thing that we spoke about earlier is that astrology is not a predictor, and it's not something that is like a psychic kind of thing where we're going to predict that this exact thing is going to happen. But it is a way of kind of having the larger picture. And it's almost like, you know, I think a lot of people use the analogy of, or not the analogy, use the description of like, if you are taking an umbrella with you on the day where it's supposed to rain, it may not rain, you know, it may be a sunny day and the, you know, forecasters might have gotten it wrong. But if you have the umbrella, like you're prepared to be like, okay, it still sucks that it's raining. You still might get your shoes wet. You still might get caught in a puddle, but you have some sort of preparedness in feeling like, okay, well, I knew this was a possibility and it might be coming. And that's how I think you and I both look at astrology. And that's how I've kind of used astrology over at least, you know, the recent 5 years to really kind of help give you a sense of grounding and stability in a world and a time where you don't know what's coming up next. But if you have understood that these themes and archetypes have been happening for centuries and generations, you get an idea that time is cyclical in a sense, that things happen in cycles and there is no up without down, there is no good without bad. And there's still only 24 hours in a day as we know a day to be. And this too shall pass. So when you start to look at it from that kind of higher perspective, I think, at least I'm speaking for myself, I don't know if that's everybody, you can at least start to examine where you can find the positive inferences about what's going on, like how you can use what's happening to create a better system, a better environment. Nobody wanted the housing crisis to happen in 2008. Nobody wanted 9/11 to happen. But if we don't learn from these, you know, events, if we don't pull positives from those examples, then we are just literally, silence is acceptance. It's almost like just allowing it to say, all right, well, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen. And so I think for us, when we were talking about astrology from even last year and people talking about how 2020 was going to be such a big year, it was going to be a big year and a big decade, just as you're saying, because we were coming up to a time where the established way of doing things, the structures and the foundations that we had in place over governments and the top-down kind of structure of like, there are these few people at the top and these many people at the bottom. And that's how information is disseminated. That's how goods are disseminated and resources are, that paradigm was going to shift because it couldn't sustain itself anymore. And it was almost the same thing as like with climate change, which we've been seeing for decades and decades, and people have been calling for us to pay attention to. But only now in these more recent years are we really starting to see the impacts of us not taking proactive steps to do things. You know, we're starting to see that we're getting milder winters in areas where we should be getting winters for full on months. You know what I mean? Where you're
spring. I didn't have an idea that today's the first, because it's felt like
exactly.
Spring
and today's spring equinox. And so it's sort of like these were the things that were the themes that were ever present in the astrology that was being discussed. And here we are, even in this month, the first few months of the year, a lot of astrologers were saying that something was coming that would really force us to view how this change needed to happen. And, you know, that there are elements, you know, and planetary transits that were going to bring unexpected things, but that if we could see the higher view, if we could see the fact that we needed to make a change, we could do so in a positive way. And so that's like what we were speaking about when we kind of were keeping up on these things. So although, no one called that we were going to have a health crisis and a pandemic, but as it started to happen, you and I are very much like, oh, so this is it. Like, this is what we're talking about.
Literally overnight, like, oh, so this is the thing.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm personally, I don't know how you feel today, but every time I feel like someone's trying to come at me with this sense of fear about what's happening, I have to watch how I react to it, because I realize that not everyone is centered, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone's going to come at a certain point as to how they want to react to this. And like we were just saying before, there's going to be, when we get out of this, the way that life is now, it's not going to be the same. And a good amount of people don't like change. Life changes every day.
Most people don't like change.
All the time. Yeah, most people don't like change. You know, and it's going to be very interesting how relationships will be from this point forward, especially being in an election year, which is already a very charged, it's just, this country in America has just been already tension in the air from the get anyway. Right. So being in an election year with this pandemic, it's just, folks are like, we don't know what up is down and left is right, and I don't know how to be anymore. And that's why it's really ever so important, as you said in your introduction, to sit in your feelings. It's okay to feel the way that you're feeling and to sit in it. Yeah. But just like this is going to pass, your feelings are going to pass too. Your emotions will pass. Sometimes you have to just sit in your feelings and let it just flow through you. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Even myself, like I go through like waves of panic and anxiety because and it's one of those things that we'll talk about later with like limiting your interaction with the news cycle and 24-hour cable news. It's like, you know, I realize that like when I have too much overload of like all the press releases and all the updates and all of the whatevers, that it definitely has a direct impact on your energy and how you feel. And the minute that I step away from that, the minute that I shift my energy to something else or my attention to something else, something that's constructive, or whether it's not, whether it's just like you just need to take a break and lie down, you definitely feel a shift in yourself where you're like, okay, like let me recalibrate, let me refocus and figure out how I can do the most constructive things in this time. But you still give platform to that space. Like you still, just like we're talking about it now, you still give voice to those realities because it is a reality, right?
Yeah, for sure. So astrology is just one tool or one way to, you know, find out about life, and people use different tools to educate themselves. It just so happens that, you know, we read up on astrology.
Yeah, some people, an interest of ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, you know, look up to it. Religion. There's many different forms to figure out why you're here on earth and why you're going through the things that you're going through and what you're meant to do on this planet. Why are you here? And this pandemic, ironically, is, if it's not already forcing people to look within themselves and figure out what they're here to do, I personally believe it will for a majority of people in this world, as most cataclysmic things do. You're forced to look at yourself. Right. You're forced to
pre-prioritize like what's important. It's like, it's the events are without any cause or, you know, like without any question is making people slow down at the very least. It's
literally like, slow down. Like
we were all going about our daily lives and the grind. Yeah. Now it's like we're literally focused on how you're gonna keep shelter, how you're gonna care for your loved ones, and how you're gonna stay healthy. Like it really does make you slow down and shift and see like these are the things that are important, you know?
Exactly.
So I agree with you. It's definitely, if it hasn't already given people cause for that reflection, it will be.
If it's not, well then, I don't know.
It's going to be really difficult. It's going to be really difficult. You can agree, like when anything happens with change, or like any type of change happens, especially change that's uncomfortable for you, how you meet that change makes all the difference in the world. If you are completely resistant from day 1 through day 30, it will feel like an uphill battle every moment of every single day. Yeah. You know, it's like, I kind of look at it almost like a 12-step program. It's like the first step is acceptance.
There was a meme, I don't know if I sent it to you this morning, of this guy who was like playing with the little toy trucks or toy cars or whatever. Right. He had like 2 rows of them, and the caption was like day 6 of self-isolation during the coronavirus, and he
Right.
looks like, this is like a grown man, and he's like playing with these little trucks, like, and
I'm
I'm thinking,
personally
this is
living for all of the
hilarious.
quarantine memes. Like, I'm living for all of them.
Seriously.
I'm
And
living
that's
for
like
all of
the
them.
beauty of, when, you know, one thing that I know people, you know, get so caught up in memes, and some people can be really cruel in how they use them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to situations like this, what I really like seeing is how people are using humor to
kind of get
just make
through.
themselves, humor is healing. Humor, laughter is healing, and it's good that people are just looking at the funny side of this, you know, instead of wallowing in, you know, a pit of despair and thinking the world is ending. And like we were saying before, it's okay to feel that way,
Spiraling
but
into it. Yeah.
right, that's what you don't want to
It can
do.
definitely become a rabbit hole. Like, you know, definitely lead you down a path.
For sure. There's
But
point when you,
I guess that's a good segue. Like, so should we start? Let's talking about kind of our little tips and tricks that we were wanting to share with the community. Like, do you want to start, or should I start? What do you want to do?
I'm looking at my vitamins and things.
Yeah.
Straight at the, yes. I'll start. I'll be volunteer tribute, you know. So
yes, tribute.
Hunger Games. Should I use that reference? Don't do that. Sorry if I've offended anyone.
That's for another place in time. A whole
Woo! Talking about humor though.
Right.
So I just want to, before I show you guys certain things that I am eating, and these are things that I take on a daily basis even before this pandemic started. I personally believe, just through my own experiences throughout life, that, you know, it's good to strengthen your immune system. You have an immune system. It's regulated, you know, you're regulated by temperature. It's within your body, and it's something that we all carry, and it can be weakened or strengthened. And, you know, when you get a cold or virus or any other type of illness, from my own personal experience, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to sit here and say, you know, I have a PhD in this stuff, but just from what I've experienced in life as a human being, you can strengthen your immune system. I've heard people say that you're born with your immune system, which is true, and that you can be born with a weak immune system. That's possibly true. I don't know, but regardless of what, if that's true or not true, you can strengthen it. You can strengthen your immune system on a daily basis. There are certain things that you can take. Now, I go to Vitamin Shop. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies or brands that I'm about to show you to. So I don't want you thinking that I am an influencer for, you know, not that type of thing.
This is a paid advertisement.
Seriously, this is not a paid ad for all of these brands. And some of these I've just started using. The majority of them I've used for years, and I rarely get sick. If I get sick with a cold, it does not last that long. Might last max 4 days. When I get a cold, it'll be really horrible the first 2 days, and then it'll just peter out really quickly. And I honestly believe it's because of the things that I drink, vitamins that I take, so forth and so on. Toni and I are both West Indian, so and I forgot to bring
our
up
Caribbean friends.
Yes, there are certain things that we've grown up taking since birth. So I forgot to bring up that bottle, but I want to recommend cod liver oil. It sounds disgusting.
Oh God, it tastes horrible. But it works.
It's you can get the form of it that's flavored, orange flavored, but to be quite honest, you want to get the most purest form of cod liver oil without the additives and flavoring. Note to you, whoever is watching, if it tastes nasty, it's good for you. Right? The nastier it tastes, the better it is for you.
Right?
Legit facts. So cod liver oil is great. My mom used to give it to me and my brother every day during the winter when we were young. Like every morning, cod liver oil with some orange juice. Rarely got sick, rarely got colds. So I recommend cod liver oil. You can get that. I've seen it in Vitamin Shop. I think I've seen it at GNC. I'm not too sure, but it's definitely in Vitamin Shop. If you're ever in a Caribbean, you know, community, different shops, if you're in New York or any big city and there's a Caribbean community, West Indian, you're going to find cod liver oil. That's just, it is what it is. and load up on
like
that.
our cousin.
Seriously, that literally is our tussin. That's our Robitussin. And we don't take Robitussin because we take power oil.
We don't.
So, and it makes your skin look fantastic. It has vitamin
it
D
does
in
really
it.
great things for your skin.
Yeah, omega-3s.
All those fatty acids.
Yes, fat is actually good for you, but that's another topic.
Yeah,
Fat
we'll do that in like another part of the series.
Yes,
it's like a good thing.
So I agree. So we have cod liver oil. This is the multivitamin that I take. The brand is Smarty Pants. Okay. I've taken so many different types of multivitamins, from Centrum, which everyone pretty much knows about the Centrum multivitamins, to, off-brand organic brands. But I recently picked up Smarty Pants, and it's delicious. These are gummies. I personally cannot stand taking pills. That's just me. I've always been like that. I don't like taking pills. I can't stand it.
I'm actually
so
the
this
same.
is
My mom's a nurse, okay? So
yeah, so but I can't stand it. So for me, it's easier to take the gummy forms of these multivitamins. This particular one I chose because it's free of gelatin, soy, synthetic colors, artificial flavors, preservatives, yeast, wheat, milk, eggs, gluten, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, shellfish, and salicylates. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it has barely any preservatives or additives in it. And it also has omega-3s, probiotics, which is important. And I'm going to get into that because I actually have a separate form of probiotics just by itself. Your gut, we'll get into that in a minute because your gut health is really important. Toni's shaking her head like.
All my clients know. I'd be like, it shows up on your face. So yes, I second that wholeheartedly.
It's a real thing. Vitamin D, as a woman, vitamin D is so important for you, and folate, you need that. Vitamin B12s for energy, biotin, vitamin K, and zinc. So far, so good with this multivitamin. I mean, it tastes great. And I know I just told you if something tastes nasty, it's good for you, but this has only 7 grams of sugar in it.
Right.
So that's why
like Mary Poppins, it's like a spoonful of sugar,
Yeah, pretty much. If it didn't have sugar in it, it'd be disgusting, but this just gets me through the day.
And it's interesting that you pointed out that, it's multivitamin, so I'm not surprised that it has zinc. But zinc, some of my clients whose parents are doctors or actual medical professionals are saying that zinc is like the one thing that is actually killing viruses and really can help in terms of impacting the course of the virus in your system. So zinc is great.
Zinc for immunity. That's literally what it says.
Yeah.
I want to bring it.
I'm a highlight and just bring it to
for immunity.
Give yourself. I'm not making it up. Yeah.
It's so good for you. Speaking of probiotics, so my mom picked this up. It's called Renew Life. That's the brand. Okay. This is an Ultimate Flora probiotic. This is the woman's version. So it says Women's Care Go Pack. These are vegetarian capsules, so for those who are vegetarian, you can definitely get this brand. It's safe for you. And it has 15 billion live cultures and 8 probiotic strains. It also promotes vaginal health. If the word vaginal, grosses you out, sorry, you're out of luck. You have to know these things. And you only take one daily. Now, this is a pill. This one isn't super big, so I'm okay taking this. But I don't take it because of the multivitamin, or I drink kombucha as well. So it's very rare. This is like a backup for me, but this is awesome. Probiotics are great. And a lot of people, it's only been until maybe 2-3 years that probiotics has become like this big thing, this key word in the mainstream. But it promotes gut health. And a lot of people don't realize that if your gut is out of whack, it's going to show up everywhere. Like Toni said, it shows up on your face, you break out, you feel sluggish, you don't have a lot of energy. It's all good. All right. We're back. Okay. So yes, probiotics. This is Renew Life. This is just a particular brand that we found that certain day we went grocery shopping, but gut health is so important. And it makes sense to me because I didn't realize anything about probiotics. I didn't even know that was a word, had no idea about gut health and how important it is to your overall health until I started thinking back on past experiences when I first start to feel sick, it usually starts in my throat and my throat gets itchy. Sorry if I think the video is just a little bit
delayed. It's okay. I think your voice is fine.
Yeah, it's all good. So I don't see you moving, but that's okay. We'll work it out. So yeah, I would go, okay, you're good.
Yeah.
I would go and think about past experiences in which, when I start to get a cold, my throat starts feeling itchy, but I also knew I was getting sick because my stomach would just start to feel like it wouldn't be upset, but it would just kind of, once my stomach felt off, then my whole body felt off, So when I started to, like, if my stomach was making gurgling noises or just, feeling strange in some way, then my whole, it felt as though the gut was connected to everything else in my body. And then I just felt sick overall.
Mhm.
That's just me. Everyone is different. Some people, they might not feel anything happening with their stomach while they're sick, or maybe it happens after the initial symptoms. Everyone is kind of different. But when I personally started taking probiotics, I felt a complete difference. I definitely felt as though they were working. And some people might say they feel a little bit energetic after taking the probiotics. That might be a case-by-case thing. I personally know that it definitely cleans out your system, which is good. And B, you do feel overall healthy. It's not a wonder drug. It's not magic. But at the same time, if you take probiotics, you're going to feel significantly better. I know this because I've experimented and tried it. So probiotics should definitely be on your list if you're the type of person that, say, you're always having gut issues and maybe you've gone to the doctor and they prescribe something and you're the type of person that might not want to take the drug they prescribe. I know people like that who don't like to eat,
and then just to back up from like in a skin perspective, there's been a lot of studies to show that there's a lot of linkage between acne conditions, rosacea, eczema, contact dermatitis conditions that are on the skin that are related to gut flora and gut health. So a lot of times if I have clients on my table that come in and they are dealing with rosacea or they're dealing with eczema or they're dealing with acne, we holistically try to start with managing their gut health, but also then we start to go into the different foods in which they're eating because it has an effect on their skin. So my clients, if they're watching this, they know already. They're like, oh, Toni keeps preaching about probiotics and your gut health. But they do notice a difference. And, it's studies that have been backing up this up. It's not just like, oh, some woo-woo, like go to a naturopathic and they tell you this is true. You can Google search these trials or these scientific studies on how your gut flora health affects your skin, and then how it shows up in other linkages to other, chronic diseases and conditions. So,
Yeah, and that's where another conversation that we could have later is just about the different diets, like keto diet, Mediterranean diet. I mean, I've been reading,
or even just simple like single food or grouping foods that are eliminated from your diet. Like there's been a lot of studies with like citrus and acne, dairy and acne or breakout. So yeah, we could totally go into that. But continue. So what's your next?
Yes, so I have a few more bottles. So I recently picked this bad boy up. It's called Plant-Based Tonics Green Minerals. It's a drink. It's by a brand called Gold Thread. I pretty much am the type of person where I'm not scared to experiment when it comes to buying different tonics or trying smoothies or green juices and things of that nature, because it's pretty much it's the safest route in terms of, if you're scared of, getting sick, I've never gotten sick from any of these drinks that I've picked up. This one just happened to catch my eye and it is awesome. The reason that it caught my eye was because it's green and it said green minerals, and minerals, vitamins, all the good stuff for you. But also it contains super herbs, spices, and adaptogens. Yes. I didn't want to mess that up.
No.
There's a lot of ingredients in it. Some I heard of and some I thought, okay, well, it's got to be good for you, because a lot of these ingredients that I'm going to read off, I mean, they don't sound appetizing. So it has nettle leaf, oat straw, alfalfa leaf, horsetail leaf, red clover blossom, raspberry leaf, rose hips, lemongrass, linden leaf, plus flower, and liquid chlorophyll.
Yeah, it's funny because like that's pretty much what I'm gonna start talking about, is just some of those herbal supplements that you can take.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of those are excellent for just helping your support of your immunity and your health. So
And it
those are
doesn't
plant
taste,
allies for the most
yeah, I
part.
mean, it doesn't taste like, I don't want to say like anything, or it doesn't taste like nothing, but there's only 6 grams of sugar in it. I'm really big on low sugar.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that's been dropped into the mainstream in terms of sugar itself and how bad it is for you. I don't think you need to completely eliminate sugar from your diet, but you should watch the types of sugars that you ingest and try to keep it as natural as possible. So say, for instance, fruit has natural sugar in it,
Mm-hmm.
but fruit's not bad for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should overload on a bunch of fruit throughout the day. I mean, eat as much fruit as you think you can ingest, but don't go overboard, because I'm the type of person that's all about moderation with anything, whether it's good or bad for you, quote unquote. But in terms of sugar and the amounts that you take, it is important. And I can't remember the max amount of sugars that you should be eating or drinking on a daily basis. I heard, I don't know if it's like 25 grams or something. That could be even a lot more. I'm not sure. That'll be something that I have to research, but low sugar is key. I think just keep it as low as possible, because sugar is in everything, even things that you don't think have sugar.
Yeah.
This also has a ton of potassium, which is great for you, 225 milligrams, and 50 milligrams of calcium, which is good for your bones. So it tastes good. I mean, it's not, you might be looking at it thinking, well, that looks disgusting, it's green, but it actually doesn't taste bad at all. And I'm probably going to drink this much more often. But this is just an example. There's many different types of juices and drinks that you can find at an organic store, any health food store, whether you go to, say, Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Sprouts. There's a ton. So it's up to your discretion what looks good to you. And if you look at the nutrition facts, what works for you. I don't want to really call this a drink, but it's a shot. I'm all about my shots. I'm just all about these little shots. This one is new for me. I tried it and it's awesome. This is called My Adrenal Mojo. The brand is Kionic, and they have like different types. So this one is the relaxed type. It's an herbal juice shot, basically, and it contains tart cherry, which is another buzzword that I've heard a lot of in recent weeks. Tart cherry, ginger, which is really good for you, especially during the winter seasons. Ginger, turmeric, all of that good stuff. Clove, ashwagandha, cinnamon, and hibiscus. And
Nice.
it's pretty yummy. It's pretty yummy. It's not bad at all. Might look disgusting, but it's good. Another thing that I picked up, which I haven't taken in years, but something told me to get back up on this bad boy, is black elderberry. A lot of people are starting to get up on elderberry.
We're going to talk about elderberry in a second.
Yeah. It's becoming the next hot thing in the health world, but it's always been around. It's just that people are now discovering.
It's been a folk medicine for years.
Yeah.
Years,
Absolutely. And it says Sambucus Immune. So this is all supporting your immune system, strengthening it. This is in syrup form. I don't know if it's in pill form. Do you know if there's a pill form for this?
I think you can make pills out of it, but it's, I mean, to me, it's more effective if you do it as a tincture, which is something that's an elixir or syrup. A lot of people will probably be familiar with elderberry syrup, and you can make elderberry syrup at home. So if you don't want to buy something, from a store, you can actually make elderberry syrup. You can just Google that recipe. It's becoming in the mainstream. I do it every year. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
This is so good for you. This has also echinacea in it, which is great for the winter, and astragalus.
Yeah, this is so funny. This is like some of the herbs that I'm literally going to talk about in a second. So yeah,
I love it. And it doesn't taste bad. It does have some red raspberry juice concentrate in this one. It's a little thick, so when you take, now this tells you for adults over 12 years of age to take 2 teaspoons daily, which is pretty much what I take. That's the daily maintenance. Now, if you want to go intensive use and take more of it, it's your discretion.
Mm-hmm.
You can take 2 teaspoons 4 times daily. So that's, I would assume if you wanted to go that route, that's because you really think you need to strengthen your immune system more
It's
than
usually like, it's usually, that's almost similar to how they prescribe you to take elderberry syrup when you make it, but it's usually used in more increased dosages as you get up to something that you feel like is an event. So like if you feel a tickling happening, or if you feel in your throat, like if you feel like you're going to come down with something, or you've been exposed to people who have like the flu or an infection, you can take it in an increased dosage to kind of boost up your immune system. But generally it's good like in the winter months, or like I will take it in the morning or at night just as a preventative, like one dosage a day, like not not like in that increased dosage. But if I feel like, ooh, like somebody was in my vicinity, if people were like coughing on the trains or something, then like you'll go ahead and like take it a little bit more just to help boost your immune system.
That's really a good thing that you bring up, though, because I take, except for the probiotic, I'm pretty much taking all of these things on a daily basis. The herbal juice shot, that's your discretion. Some of these things you don't have to overload on. You can experiment. I've never gotten sick or have any adverse reactions to these things. But, still use your discretion. Now, if you think you want to use this black elderberry syrup every day, you can. It's not going to hurt you. Or if you want to do it every other day, that's completely fine. When the seasons change, that's when I start to get a little bit more up on things, such as like cod liver oil and elderberry. In the summer months, I keep it really simple because it's hot and heat kills germs anyway.
You're sweating a little more, so you're excreting more.
Absolutely. And so, I wash my hands and all of that, but I just don't I don't go ham on like the cod liver oil, or I barely take cod liver oil in the summer, to be quite honest. When it starts to get really cold, that's when I, take the cod liver oil and start to take the elderberry, drink more tea. I don't really drink a lot of tea in the summer months, which I heard is actually bad for you. I was told that you should actually drink tea, and everyone's different, but you should drink tea all year round, or at least
I drink tea all year round. Like in my fridge right now, I have like a medicinal blend that I put together just for the event that's going on right now, and I make it hot, but then I leave it in my fridge so it's chilled, and you can sip on it throughout the day. But that's also
I was talking about hot tea. I should have said it more so hot tea. Like,
no, that's the preference. I drink hot tea all year round as well, because heat generally is good for the body. It depends on like what your conditions are, obviously. But it's a personal I think intuitively our bodies also, we have to give credit to the ingenious machines that they are. They'll tell you what they need. Like, it's not it's not about this woo-woo of like, okay, now don't listen to a doctor, just listen to your body. But I'm just saying, in general, like when you're thirsty, your body tells you you're dehydrated. Like it gives you symptoms.
Exactly.
I agree. Do you have any more? Because I think that's I was like, that was a perfect segue to talk about herbs, but we'll get to it in a second.
One more thing. And I found this, and I haven't taken this in a long time. I do it rarely. I'm telling you guys now, it's disgusting. Oil of oregano. It doesn't taste good. In fact, it's very abrasive. I'm not gonna lie. This one has extra virgin olive oil mixed in it because I don't think you necessarily want to ingest it in its pure form. You
can't ingest essential oils in its pure form. You don't even want to put it in topically directly, burn you, and you don't want to do that.
Exactly. So you have to be careful with this one. But if you live on the East Coast or in a country, city, state that has seasons, if you're sick, if you want to combat sickness, just 4 drops is all you need, and it comes with the dropper itself, so you don't overdose on it. It will knock that out. Like
oregano. Yeah, oregano is a very strong antiviral, so it's
It is.
been proven as such. And like
Yeah.
even I'm sure like you as a West Indian growing up, like we didn't really have so much oregano, but like there was
Right.
like rosemary, thyme, and garlic and everything.
Still cook with that every meal, at least once a day.
Yeah, I was
I
just
have a
at dinner
meal.
with a friend of mine, and she's also Caribbean, and she was just talking about garlic tea, which is literally just
Mhm.
boiled garlic. And so, yeah, it's the perfect segue because I was just thinking, I use a lot of understanding or knowledge about ingredients with my clients when it comes to their skin and holistic health.
Mhm.
And so I have always been very interested in herbs and their actions topically on the skin, but also internally, just to help support my own health and the health of my clients. And so I studied herbalism from that perspective, and I am in no way a clinical herbalist. At the end of this, if for anyone who's interested, I'm going to leave information to some of my colleagues that I've worked with who are clinical herbalists. Clinical herbalists are really important because it gets into the details of the dosages of how you should take these things, how they interact with each other, blending different herbs together and their herbal actions and how they're going to be affecting your system. I'm at work in several places, and I'm lucky enough to have some people who are clinical herbalists who I'm recommending my clients to go see as a consultation all the time, just because they, like in any other consultation, like with a doctor, they're going to sit down and go through your medical history, your underlying chronic conditions, symptoms, and that nature, and come up with a plan that's fit for you specifically. But for this purpose of today, I really just wanted to give people some really nice basic advice and things that you can access readily to help support your immunity in this time and then going on beyond, like just like we're talking about with Candace and how she takes these things to support her health daily and seasonally. I think we're starting to come back around to a time where people start to realize, in addition to all the benefits of Western medicine and pharmacology and that, having control over how you can support yourself before you can get to a doctor, in between going to see your doctor, with things that are taking from your doctor, gives you a sense of empowerment when you know how to use them and why. So I'm just going to talk about a few things, a few herbs that you can keep. Like people love to talk about having like an herbal apothecary at home. I guarantee you at some point in my life, I'm going to have like a huge pantry of just herbs. I love using them for cooking. I love using them for skincare. I love using them for health. And Candace brought up elderberry, which has definitely been a buzzword as of late. If you don't know about elderberry, definitely just do a quick Google search. It is a strong antiviral, big immune support. A lot of people make elderberry syrup and then also sell it. You'll see elderberry as an additive in a lot of these immune boosting formulas. And it's a wonderful herb that's very easy to get access to if you have online access to an herbal shop, or if you have herbal shops in your community, support them because they're small businesses doing amazing things for their community. And typically the way you prepare elderberry is that it's a berry and you boil it down into, they boil it down and then you add some syrup to it, like maple syrup or honey. And it becomes the syrup that you then take, orally. You give yourself those dosages and you take them. Because of something like this, as we get into a health crisis, if you go to your stores right now, elderberry is probably out. Like they probably have sold out of all the stock that they have. And that's because, it's one of those buzzwords that everyone knows. So I'm going to give you a couple of other herbs that you can go and stock up on when it's safe to do so. Like I said, again, you can order these online from trusted sources, make sure they're organic and sustainable. So you can support in that way. But if you have herbalists in your community, if you have herbal shops, try to go to them because they're doing really good work. They're small businesses. So of course, they're probably struggling to try to get and keep their doors open. But obviously practice safe social distancing. Like one of the herbal shops in my community, which I stocked up on a few things yesterday, we're following the guidelines of not having more than 10 people in the space at one time. I think I was in there with one other person. They're actively wiping everything down, their POS systems, the like. And a lot of these places, including the one I went to, was allowing you to order things online and then just go pick them up at the store. So just, you know, be cognizant, but I chose to go because I want to support those places in my community, but make the choice that feels right for you. So one of the herbs that we were talking about was elderberry, which is probably sold out. So moving on to something that you could also use, echinacea. Echinacea is something that you can also use as an immune booster. I'm using the root of echinacea. And when you use a root of an herb as opposed to the flower that's dried, you need to prepare it a little bit longer. So typically you're going to boil the root for about 15 to 20 minutes before you can use it as a tea. Where the herbs is just like when you get a tea bag and you have the dried herbs in a tea bag, you can steep it for about 5 to 7 minutes and then drink it in that way. So echinacea is really good for immune boosting, helps bring up your resistance to accepting infections. It's antibacterial and it's anti-inflammatory as well. So it helps you with, antiviral as well. So it helps you, again, in that stimulation of your immune system. So echinacea is great. It's one of those, just like elderberry, where you take it in advance of something. If you take it at the first few signs of like a cold or something going on, it will probably shorten the length of the cold that you have, but it's not going to avoid it from happening at that point. So a lot of people take it, again, like the elderberry, in advance and as a precaution, but you can certainly take it if you feel something coming on, because overall it's going to help your immune system. Lemon balm, which is one of my favorite all-time herbs. It's like a key staple in my pantry and in my cabinet, and I make sure I stock up on that regularly. Lemon balm is one of those things that I call a multifunctional ingredient. Is my audio jumping?
You're good.
Okay, just want to make sure. So lemon balm is known as a nervine, and nervines are something that helps regulate your nervous system. So in addition to looking at herbs that are going to help support your immune system, I'm also kind of recommending herbs that help people with anxiety, because we're all going through those kind of stress periods right now where your nervous system is all over the place. So lemon balm has been studied to have effectiveness on mood and your nervous system, to calm your nervous system. So it's very relaxing, but it's also an antiviral. So it's also going to help killing any infectious diseases or helping you resist infection diseases and boost that immunity. So lemon balm is an awesome thing to have. I sip that pretty much year round. I've given it to family members and friends if I feel like they need a little bit help with a mood stimulant, or not stimulant, mood regulation. So it's also been used as a mild antidepressant. So I think it's perfect for something that's going on right now, like what we have happening, just to give you more than one kind of benefit when you're taking an herb. Calendula is also a really nice one. It's really great for skin health in terms of wound healing and calming the skin. So I'll often use it topically as a mask, but you can also drink it as part of a tea. It's an anti-inflammatory, it's antimicrobial, but it's also a demulcent and an emollient. So emollient when it's applied on the skin topically. Demulcent is how it brings moisture to your internal body. So it's an herb you want to be careful with if you're pregnant. So again, when I go back to talking about making sure you do a consultation with a clinical herbalist, these are the things that they kind of look out for when you're talking to them one-on-one, so that you can decide if you can take this, or if you should, or if you shouldn't. But calendula makes a really nice blend with some of these other teas when we talk about herbs that you use for teas that might have like a bitter taste to it, like echinacea definitely will. The calendula and the lemon balm will kind of help with giving some, heightened flavor to it. So a different, like a softer flavor. Holy basil, or tulsi, is known as an antibacterial and a carminative as well. So again, going to be helping you regulate your moods, your nervous system, but also boosting your immunity. And holy basil has been known and studied for its benefits for your respiratory system. So when we're talking about colds and flus, we're talking about your lung health, we're talking about breathing, we're talking about dryness and tightness in the chest. These herbs are really great for that. And Candace also mentioned astragalus root, which I have in my pantry. It actually, let's see if I have it on my table here. It looks like this. So again, it's the root. So it's a little bit lighter than the echinacea root, which is, you can definitely see is more of almost like a bark consistency. So you'll see
Now,
like it's a little bit harder.
Where do you get your roots, Toni? Where do you get your roots? Where do you buy them?
So these were from my local herb shop. I used Radicle Herb Shop, which is on Atlantic Avenue here in Brooklyn. And MountainRoseHerbs is an online shop that I use a lot for skincare things that I make, and even just restocking my pantry. So they are organic, sustainable, and I love them for that. They have a ton of really good things. And as you buy the herbs, they actually have like descriptions about what their origins are, what they're used for. So definitely, you know, keep those in your hat. We'll put those in the links below and all that other stuff. But astragalus root, like Candace was mentioning before, also good for your respiratory system. Is an adaptogen, so it helps your body adapt to stress. So when we were talking about that word adaptogen earlier, that's what an adaptogen is. So again, looking for these blended actions that are happening so that you're helping holistically your body, not just in one area, but you know, in multiple areas if that's possible. So now a lot of times I will blend several of these herbs together to make teas that I boil down, just like I was talking about the teas that I'm leaving in my fridge to sip on throughout the day. And usually in times like this, when you're trying to prevent something from coming on, you can sip on those for like 2 to 3 times a day. But again, I would encourage for you guys to reach out to clinical herbalists, go to your shops and have the conversations with them, because they are well versed in the studies and the applications and the interactions of these. Just like you would take any other drug, I have the same precautions with herbs. But I think that it's important for us to know these things, because you keep a little bit of some empowerment for yourself of what you can reach for and reach to before you go that extra step or you go and see your doctor. Now, these are herbs that I would say you can keep in your house and make a little pantry and have them there on any given time, not just now, but after this is going on. But immediately, as we talked about before, that's probably more easily to access through like vegetable stores or your groceries. The basics, garlic, turmeric, and ginger, I will all day long, okay? You can boil those down together and just sip on it as a broth, add it to your food. Garlic is a very strong antiviral. Ginger is an anti-inflammatory, also helps with like clearing any kind of gunk out of your system. So I put ginger in everything. So those are kind of things that if you can't get to these or until you get to these, you can still use those and they will help. So that is what I think. I was like, let's just start with those, because I think the more you have on hand, the more empowered you'll feel. And I'm always about keeping the conversation about educating people and giving them tools and resources so that they don't feel like they don't have any. And then you can actually go online and look up a lot of these studies on these herbs and their actions. So if you don't feel comfortable taking the advice from me, you can go and do the research for yourself. But like I said, these are the intros to these things. Go and talk to an herbalist, go and talk to a naturopathic doctor, really go and kind of smell the herbs, kind of experience them for yourself. And again, intuitively, I think you'll find some that are kind of your groove that you like to have on hand at any given time. So yeah, so that is kind of what I wanted to start off with for today. I think for me, Candace, going forward, I'm going to, at least on my channels and platforms, I also, as a project manager, have been trying to use the tips and tricks that I have learned through my career to help people kind of identify their, when you want to say quote unquote life purpose, or like a direction they want to lead their lives in. So I'm going to be sharing some of those ideas on those platforms. So you've got a ton of time at home. You can kind of delve into those. And also my podcast is also available as a platform where I pretty much have 4 episodes on that very same topic. So if you have time, check those out. But yeah, Candace, what do you have to?
Yeah, I mean, I am venturing into YouTube. The videos that I have, I mean, I've had my YouTube channel for a long time, but it was set on private. So I've just recently decided to put more of my videos that showcase my on-camera work in terms of what I do in the independent wrestling world and interviews, what's going to end up happening is I'm definitely going to also showcase this talk that we did on that channel, and then that's going to veer into having interviews and more conversations with different people about health. And it definitely won't just be about things that we discussed today, vitamins and roots and herbs. It will surely go into topics of conversation ranging, about mental health, financial health. I would love to talk with a lot more athletes about the health, the things that they're dealing with in terms of even mental health, workouts, fitness, what they eat. I really want to make it a platform that is all encompassing within the topics of health, wellness, and fitness, and what exactly those are. Because, and I forgot to mention this because I know we talked about a lot of things, but and this is another big topic, but we've talked about, people that feel as though they can't afford a lot of the things that we've showcased. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but it's just something that I feel is really important for us to just plug right now before we leave, that there may be some of you watching this talk and you might be thinking, well, this all sounds great, but I feel as though I can't afford these things, or these things are not readily available in my community, depending on where you live. So we'll definitely give you guys directives on where to find these things, how much some of these things might cost, ways that you can make a lot of these teas that Toni's talking about. And I definitely want to showcase recipes as well, and talk about ways that you can save money and be healthy. That's a huge thing that I also want to bring up on my YouTube channel, how to save money, do this affordably, and whether you're single, living by yourself, or you have a whole family, there's ways that you can do this and not break the bank. And I guarantee that because I'm living proof of that. I do not have millions of dollars to.
No one is the Hilton here. No, I agree with that. I second that wholeheartedly. And I think you'll find that a lot of your local shops and your herbs, they're doing a lot of great things right now. Even some people are even giving away their overstock. Some people are discounting their stock. And the thing about it is that when you get into this world, you'll come to realize is like, you don't need all the things that I just mentioned. And there's many, many more things than I've mentioned. But even one or two or three of them can be really supportive and helpful. We definitely are going to keep up and making sure that those resources are there so that you can access this stuff. I mean, I think for both of us, that's really huge, is like, we got into this space because we wanted to have an access point of care and community for all types of people and all people. And so we are always really cognizant of making sure that it's not like, we're not telling you to go out and buy this $90 herbal, mixture. And there are some of them that are out there. But knowledge is power. And I think that's really the key, is like sharing that knowledge in the community just helps it grow. And so that's what we're really here primarily to do. I was actually thinking I might put a little ebook together and put that on my social platforms. I'll make it really accessible. Maybe it's like $10 or $11 or donation based. I'm not sure yet. But I will put all of this information in there. I will put links to people that I know you can get in touch with who are cool and are doing amazing work, and recipes as well that you can try at home or gift to a friend. And so, yeah, I think what we'll start to see is, like we talked about earlier, I think we're going to start to see a lot of people just step up and really give their services like as much as they're allowed. I mean, I'm a person who I feel like everyone is valued to get a monetary exchange for what they're providing. But I think you'll notice that in times of crisis like this, people will kind of step up and be like, without putting myself into more exposure of being out on the streets, like just giving a voice and a platform to healing and wellness, in all types of forms. So yeah, I think really good things to come.
Absolutely. And then we'll put all of our handles too, our Twitter and
right.
IG, all the social media stuff.
Yeah. I've already started, on my platforms telling people, hit me up if you have questions. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but you can ask me questions, and quite a few people have, and they're really appreciative of it. And so we'll keep that going too. And I'm sure this won't be our last conversation because this was like awesome.
It really was. I knew it would be, though. I wasn't fearful
of that, right? No, totally.
Of all the things to be fearful of now, it's like, no, that's no.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at a time where it really is about reinvention too. And so I think we've talked about a lot of these things for a long time, but we've never really had the time or space to dedicate to it. So, talk about looking at that silver lining.
Exactly. So I think this is going to be the start of just a new era, a new decade, both literally and figuratively. And thank you to everyone who's watching. You don't have to, but if you found that anything that we discussed is of great importance or has made you think, oh, I might want to try this, and maybe this will help me in terms of even being able to study for a test, like being able to focus. There might be some vitamins that you're like, oh, maybe I should try that, do this. I mean, if we help one person, then all the better, so just keep watching. There's going to be more great things that are going to come out. Follow Toni, she's fantastic. Please follow myself. We've known each other for, as she said, like I think more than 10 years.
More than 10 years. Like we're not going to age ourselves. We're not going to age ourselves.
I don't know. We're not going to age ourselves.
But it's been a while. Let's just leave
it. It's been a while. It really has. Time flies. It has. But
all good things.
There's more to come. There's more to come, and hopefully we get to do some cooking stuff too. I really want to.
Oh my God, I would need like a setup, but yeah, like I would love to show just basic steps on like how to prepare these things. But yeah, more to come for sure.
Yeah.
All right, girls.
So thank you guys.
Thanks so much.
And we'll see you soon. And please stay safe out there.
Peace and love.
Stay healthy. Bye.
Word.